complete possession of her artist self. Our first week living together, we sat in our backyard drinking red wine while I read James Baldwin short stories to her. She walked around the apartment with paint-stained fingers muttering about light saturation. And she didn't mind it when I walked around muttering about character interaction. She recognized the artist in me and gave me the confidence to take myself seriously as an artist. CP seemed to like the artist in me, but what about his friends? Was I going to have to hold my own in a chat about the role of exports in America's gross domestic product? If I tried to tell them about the yoga retreat I'd just been on, or my favorite chapter of Invisible Man, would they be interested, or would they just smile politely and tiptoe away toward the bar?
Now, in the privacy of our home, Jess and I make jokes about race all the time. We've decided, for example, not to call ourselves an interracial couple. When either of us dated a white person in the past, that was an interracial relationship. We are a hyperracial couple. And when Jess wakes me in the morning, she'll whisper,
"Open your eyes."
And I'll mutter, "They're already open." They're just squinty eyes. But jokes like that are the extent of my racial wisdom. My skin is Chinese, but I don't know anything about it. For most of my life, I went around trying to pass for white. Until I was 26, I didn't have any Chinese friends. I speak English like I'm from Chicago, and I've gone by my initials, CP, for so long that I don't answer to my given name, Jape. I can pass for white in polite circles. But then there's always some bar I'll walk into, where every stare seems to say, "Nah, fella, you ain't white." But in my late 20s, I started to discover my Chinese identity. In a group of friends, other American-born Chinese, who had the same childhood stories that I had, and laughed at the same jokes about race. I finally had a tribe that I belonged to. A group where I didn't have to pass to be a part of. My grandfather would roll over in his grave to hear me say, "Screw the 5,000 years of history. Being Chinese means I've got friends that I can call chinks." Yeah, you feel bad. But now, here's my girlfriend's family. An enormous black family from 17 to 75, boisterous and big and in your face. How was I supposed to fit in?
When I met CP, the first part of him I fell in love with was the artist. Before I knew who he was, I'd read a chapter of his novel about a brother and sister navigating race and identity in the Midwest. He courted me with rambles through art museums and fiery-eyed conversations about art and race and culture that lasted hours. And I thought, this is the kind of guy I could really be with. I didn't have to justify being a writer like I had to with a doctor ex-boyfriend because CP understood the power and significance of art in the world. I didn't have to hide my ambitions like I'd had with an actor ex-boyfriend because he wasn't intimidated by it. I didn't have to worry about being racially objectified in my own relationship because he knew how shitty it was to be made to feel the other by majority culture. Being with him, I felt so certain in who he was and who I was when I was with him. And the moment I stepped through the door of that downtown condo, all of that certainty evaporated.
I shuffled between rooms, squeezing between Grandma Lewis and Jess's mom as they fussed over the stove, to the crowded living room where men, all a foot taller than me, shouted at the TV for every bad basketball play. When dinner was ready, we found out that there weren't enough chairs for everyone. So, Jess's dad asked us gently if we could wait a while, and we stood around in the kitchen, as the uncles and aunts and cousins and her grandmother and parents sat around the grand table, laughing and gabbing and having Christmas dinner, until some of her cousins finished their meals and let us have their chairs. Jess and I pulled the chairs into the kitchen, and the two of us had a quiet dinner by ourselves at a small kitchen table without the rest of the family. After dinner, I was in the living room with a few of the uncles and cousins. Uncle Derek was quizzing Cousin Brian about living on the south side of Chicago. Brian said, "Come on up for a visit. When you get downstairs from me, call, and I'll come get you." Uncle Derek asked, "Call you? Why? Do I need to be scared?" Brian shrugged, and Uncle Derek leaned in for the joke. "What, are there black people where you live?" He imitated being on the phone. "Brian, come get me. I see black people on the street." Everyone in the room cracked up. I just forced a smile. I was seated on the arm of a couch and it was easy to slip away. It was like another reminder. No, motherfucker, you ain't black either.
The condo had a stunning ninth floor view of the Loop. Gina had put out a beautiful spread. There was only one problem. At the time, I was a vegan. No meat, no dairy, no eggs. There was this brilliant buffet and the only thing on it I could eat was fruit. I had too much riding on this day to come off looking like a picky eater. So I fixed myself a plate of fruit salad and a large glass of champagne. I stitched myself to CP's elbow and looked around. No one seemed to be paying me much attention, but I could feel them with their designer cocktails and their high-end casual wear and their Roth IRAs just judging me. There were the hosts of the party, the VP of marketing for an IT firm and her husband, the day trader, who mingled casually with the married couple who were project managers at Accenture. In the corner were the anesthesiologist, the regional liquor distributor, and the chip designer, all of whom buy and race sports cars and sailboats as hobbies. CP and I talked with his best friends, the MBA from the London School of Economics, who was budget director for the city, and the Kellogg MBA, now managing director of a consulting firm. CP was right at home. He drank and talked with his friends as easily as he and I had talked about movies and poetry. He talked about the stock market.
No, don't short tech now. Follows a big upswing in the sector.
And politics.
The 3rd District's vulnerable. Maddie was an appointee.
And business.
It's mostly data mining. I used to do custom dev, but it's all ERPs now.
All the while I'm thinking, who the hell is this guy? This is not the deep, soulful, complicated sculptor/writer I fell in love with. He didn't look any different, but he'd shape-shifted into this nouveau riche, Wall Street Journal reading executive that I didn't recognize. I looked around the party. Jazz poured out of hidden speakers. Men chatted in groups of 2 or 3, sipping amber beer out of pint glasses. Women lounged on the serpentine white sofa, laughing over mugs of coffee, gently chiding their children as they ran by. This was not my scene. Parties where I belonged were in flats with crumbling walls, where you wrote your name on a red Solo cup in black Sharpie. As CP laughed at a joke that was beyond me, I looked across the room and saw Audrey, a toddler whose parents were Chinese and Korean, sitting by herself on the floor playing with plastic blocks. I'd supplemented my artist life by babysitting. Maybe I should go sit with her. I'd probably be more comfortable there than anywhere else.
Everyone else stayed for the long weekend, but Jess and I left for home the next day. The highway was still slushy from the snowstorm that had hit before the holiday, and we saw dozens of cars that had been abandoned by the side of the road. Jess was driving, and the car felt oppressively small. I was bitterly sorry that we had come all this way for Christmas. I felt further away from her family than ever before. When Jess asked me, just to make conversation, what Chinese weddings were like, I blew up. I don't know. I don't know about Chinese weddings. I don't know about shit.
What did I say?
I don't know. Sometimes I think that maybe your next boyfriend will be the right one. That he'll be Christian and from a big family and black. She bit her lip hard and refused to look at me.
I don't want a next boyfriend.
We were on the highway, halfway home to Chicago. Exit signs and fast food logos thumped past my window like a slow-motion flipbook. I thought about how the people who do online dating had the right idea.